Diving into a debut record that is one of my all-time favorite albums by one of my all-time favorite bands. I absolutely love it. It goes hard. It was released in 2002, and it's one of those raw punk, just chaotic albums that has stuck with me through the years and remains a staple in this band's catalog. And I'm excited to talk about it. You're listening to P is for Punk, and today R is for Reinventing Axl Rose. Against Me has been a force in the punk scene for quite some time. Really, I think since their initial releases. They've been around for so long. They haven't released anything in a really long time, which is a huge bummer. They have never shied away from their beliefs. They've never shied away from growing as a person. But we're going to the beginning. The debut album, Reinventing Axl Rose from 2002, released on No Idea Records, following two kind of acoustic, folky, punkish EPs. There was Crime, As Forgiven by Against Me, and then there was the Acoustic EP. Now, a lot of the tracks that we hear on Reinventing Axl Rose are featured on those two EPs, but not in a way that it's just like regurgitated back on for the sake of making a full length. They are completely reformatted from acoustic folk kind of vibes to this raw, chaotic punk energy. And we'll talk about it. I like some of the acoustic versions more than I like the versions on Reinventing Axl Rose, but it is a defining album of the early 2000s, especially in folk punk and like kind of in the anarchist type of punk vibes, if you will. A lot of it kind of took the raw intimacy of those acoustic songs and really just amped it up quite a bit. It's it's very DIY. It's very political, emotionally charged, and it's kind of like created this blueprint for punk kids with acoustic guitars, I guess you could say. I love Against Me so very much. There's so many albums that I could talk about. I could talk about Searching for a Form of Clarity. I could talk about their whole catalog, but I wanted to start with Reinventing Axl Rose because that's really kind of where it was. At the time, the lineup of with this album, Laura Jane Grace, guitar, vocals, has one of the most unique and just powerful voices in the world of punk, especially at this time. James Bowman on guitar, who is a god on the guitar. He's got a unique singing voice as well, a little more higher pitched in the singing. Dustin Fridkin on the bass, later replaced by Andrew and a couple of other people, and then back to Andrew. We'll get back to that later. And then Warren Oakes on the drums. This was this is the first full band of Against Me, the Acoustic EP, and Crime. I think consisted of only Laura Jane Grace and somebody else for the most part. So songs that you see across the Acoustic EP and Crime, and also on then like Reinvented on Axl Rose, you hear Pints of Guinness Make You Stronger, Jordan's First Choice, Those Anarcho Punks Are Mysterious, I Still Love You, Julie, Reinventing Axl Rose, the title track, Walking Is Still Honest. You're getting a lots of songs that if you were an Against Me fan at the time that you were familiar with, but it's completely different in all the good ways. It's nice when bands do that, when they have an acoustic version or they have a full band version and they switch it up for the acoustic version or for the full band version, because you don't kind of want the same thing twice. And a lot of times like bands will release a song on an EP and then they just transfer it over onto the full length that either accompanies the EP or came a little bit after or a little bit before, whatever it may be. And there's nothing really different. So in a sense, a lot of these songs kind of, I guess you could say, were the demo version, but they really took a completely different approach to it. And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about these acoustic versions, like a little more loose in the structure, faster vocal phrasing, a little more thin in the production, I guess you could say. not really a lot of drums. It's called an acoustic EP. You're not going to get a lot of drums in that. And the vocals are very different, but the same person singing them, which is pretty freaking wild. Um, if you ask me, kind of some sounds that you hear across this album, and we'll talk about it, but you hear kind of like messy guitars, open chords, aggressive strumming. You get some groovy bass lines, you really do, and you get some awesome drumming from Warren, and the vocals, of course, Laura Jane Grace. Amazing, just so freaking good. There's a great story with the album artwork and just kind of with this album as well. But let's dive into the songs. Okay, it opens with a familiar song that if you were an Against Me fan at the time, Crime and the Acoustic EP were released like 2000 2001. So 2002, they're kind of hitting it hard. They're going boom boom boom. So if you're in the scene, you're in the Gainesville, Florida scene, you listen to Hot Water Music or Less Than Jake, and you know who Against Me are or who Against Me is, you're going to hear these songs that are familiar. You know the words maybe to them, but they sound a lot different. It opens with Pints of Guinness Make You Strong. An awesome song. Now, this is one where I kind of like the acoustic version a little bit better, but I do love this version of the track as well. And maybe a little bit more of a personal song, if you will. From the research I've done, it sounds like Laura Jane Grace wrote it about her grandparents, maybe mixed with some alcoholism, depression, inherited trauma, and maybe like feeling emotionally trapped, which I guess you can totally see that, starts with it starts with the familiar like little riff that you hear, and then it just kind of like hits it with that raw, loud, yelly vocal from Laura Jane Grace. Evelyn sits by the elevator doors. It's been 37 years since James died on St. Patrick's Day. So St. Patrick's Day, of course, rooted in nothing but pure drinking, more or less, getting crunk, getting wasted, and doing all that stuff. And then it just and then you hear you get to the point where it gets to the chorus, and just like James, I've been drinking Irish tonight, and you hear that the first little background vocal, and I don't know for sure if it is James or if it is somebody else, because there are songs that are coming up on the album where they brought in people to do background vocals, and Laura Jane Grace actually had like kind of another band and brought in those people to do vocals and like gang vocals and all that kind of stuff too. But I would imagine James is on a lot of these songs, singing. There's really some contrast in how those vocals sounds between Laura Jane Grace and the backing vocals. It's not harmony, I wouldn't say. It's definitely maybe it's a form of harmony, but it's not like melodic harmonizing like you think it is. It's Laura Jane Grace with this grovel, with this yell, and then you have this backup person with like kind of higher pitched kind of sound, which makes it really unique, and it stands out, but in a good way, not in a way that you're like, this is awful, but it opens the album with a punch because it takes this like folk sounding song and just makes it into pure punk rock energy. It is just boom. I think the guitar is the same, like it's the same chord progression. It's played electronically. The bass has this warmth, chaotic energy to it. The vocals are insane, cracked, and the drums just are constantly giving you this momentum. The acoustic version makes the song feel a little more isolated, which maybe that's kind of what you want when you're talking about these types of things. But it's like this song, it sounds like a party song, to be honest. But then you have like lines of, if an AA card and a lock of red hair, kept secrets of pride locked so tight in her heart. And she said, if I would have known just how things would have ended up, I just would have let myself die. Like that's not party energy by any means, but it just has that vibe, dude. It's so good. It opens up with this vulnerability and then just this raw punk energy that maybe they didn't have too much of in 2012. You know, I was 12 years old in 2012, so I wasn't really necessarily listening to the scene, so I can't speak on that too much. Um, but I don't know if you got this like DIY type of stuff. I think for sure the DIY scene was still going. It was still thriving. You know, no effects and all this kind of stuff was doing it, but I think they sounded a little more polished in a lot of that stuff. Where this one, it's just what you see is what you get, what you hear is what you get in the most beautiful way. Dude, it's so fucking good. It brings us to our second track on the album, The Politics of Starving. It's talking about capitalism, talking about wage labor, survival, should depend on like economic productivity, like poverty turning people into machines. It's kind of a deep rooted kind of situation. And honestly, like we probably see a lot nowadays still in 2026. Laura frames like hunger and desperation as like kind of political tools rather than accidents, I guess. It's definitely an aggressive early track on the album. The bass follows the guitar with like some urgency, and the gain vocals kind of have this protest chant type of vibe to it a little bit. It's almost like a militant type of vibe, which I'm sure was definitely intentional. And it's powerful. Track number 3, one of my favorite songs on the album, and you're going to hear me say that probably about half the songs on the album because they're all just so amazing. But We Laugh at Danger and Break All the Rules. It comes just with this open, like it opens with this guitar, or not guitar, drum beats, and it's like snare heavy. It's got this tight snare drum, this do 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 do, and then here comes Laura just screaming, "It was a birthday gift of a Mexican Telecaster." You got guitar strumming a little bit, but it's still like driven by this awesome drum beat. It's so freaking good. And it talks about kind of the fear of being stuck in where you're at, which we've talked about a million times on this show. I think a lot of people experience that. I haven't left the town that I've lived in my entire life. Of course, I've like traveled places, but I've never gone and lived somewhere else and experienced life in a different way. I'm not saying anything negative about where I live, but at the same time, like, dude, I got to go experience some things outside of this. This isn't all that there is. There's other things to see, and it kind of can be drowning at times and can kind of just be like, make you feel like a failure to a degree. A lot of my good friends moved. I got a friend in Hawaii. I got a friend in Maryland. I had a friend who lived in China for 5 years. And then I stuck around and stayed in the same place forever. And this song definitely resonates with that. It has kind of this repeated Mary line. Mary, there is no help for us. If this GM van don't make it across the state line, we might as well lay down and die, which is just resonates with what we were saying before. It kind of references maybe some Catholic imagery. A lot of like smaller towns have this kind of religious vibe to it a little bit, if you will, that maybe you don't agree with, maybe you do, whatever, you do whatever you want. But there's kind of humor in this song, but at the same time, it's very like anxiety ridden. Are we ever going to get out of here? If Florida takes us, we're taking everyone down with us. If I can't leave, you can't leave. If I have to suffer, you have to suffer. Well, this is like a party vibe song. It is just the gang vocals add like this basement show anthem kind of feel to it. It is just amazing. the best part, of course, is when they cut the music and it's just the group of people saying, Mary, there's no hope for us, and they're doing that kind of chorus part. You have Laura Jane Grace in there. You have that person on Pints of Guinness singing as well that sounds similar. You got a couple other people, and it's not like melodic. It's just kind of like at one point you kind of hear like a drop in the person's voice, and then kind of like turns into like the sarcastic tone, and then like you hear one person kind of like land that last line of where we're coming from will be the death of us. A little pause, and then they scream and they start kicking it back in again. Oh my god, it's amazing. I love it so much. Such a just a great song. And that's only the third song. It's only the third one, which is you know, kind of interesting. I Still Love You, Julie, which we have heard the acoustic rendition of, or the folky rendition of, is next, which is a good song as well. It has a again, this one might be one that I think is is maybe better on the acoustic versions a little bit. Um it appeared on Crime, and is kind of where the liner was the lineup was Laura Jane Grace and just like a drummer. So they gave it a little more electric kind of sound. And I think, it's kind of like talking about taking a chance a little bit, or kind of reflecting on a creative process, perhaps. Last night, a room full of drunk, sing along to the songs I never had the courage to write. Given the chance, I'd stay in this chorus forever. It's maybe somehow this scam will save us all. Kind of just talking about like maybe like desperation in some sorts of one another, and it's solid. Not my favorite song, to be honest, but I think I kind of like the feel of it more so on the Crime EP. Don't get me wrong, like I would still sing the crap out of this song if they played it live in front of me, but it's just a little, I don't know. It seems like it's missing something, but maybe not. I don't know. Number 4, scream it until you're coughing up blood, which probably isn't recommended. You shouldn't do that. Doctors wouldn't like that at all. But kind of like being emotionally honest through your music. Punk rock should mean something real instead of being a fashion trend or a style, or just, a fad, if you will. Screaming yourself into existence. You have this good guitar sound with it, a little bit of a loose drumming style with it, and a lot of like distortion from the vocals, more so because of like overmodulation because of the intensity of it. Um the very raw production in this one, which is it carries everything. It has like this little like strumming, and then it kind of busts into this like little groovy bass line. Everything you've got to hold on to, everything you relied on to be there is completely fucked. That's not optimistic whatsoever. But at the time I could see where maybe punk rock was headed in 2002, getting more into like the mainstream with bands like Sum 41, Blink 182, Green Day, and people dubbing that as punk. And back in the day, that was like, oh, if you're mainstream, you're not punk, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. Like you had to be this crusty, stinky dude that was only playing in basement shows, making $10 a gig in a broken down van to be considered punk rock. It wasn't necessarily, they didn't care about your ethos, they didn't care about your how you felt politically or anything like that. So maybe there's a little bit of a shift in that. And and to be fair, it did come with it did come with a s- it being becoming a style, be making it a fashion statement. It's like I get it. I see both sides of the coin a little bit, but I think sometimes it just gets a little too much. Um, so take for that what you will, I suppose. Another one that we might have been familiar with if you were fans of Against Me, the next track is Jordan's First Choice on the Acoustic EP. And it's kind of like this full the full band one. It's a little more layered um compared to the other songs on the record. Maybe it has some ideas on insecurity, relationships, feeling emotionally replaceable, but there's kind of like some punk ideals and vulnerability here. It's a little more melodic to a degree. Again, the bass line, there's some really like groovy bass lines on here on this album as a whole. The dude knew how to play on bass. Like he was doing really well. You have this kind of conversational vocal style to it, but then it goes into the explosiveness that we have heard to this is really like bridging the gap between that folk punk and just do it yourself punk energy here. Um and even later melodic against me's sound has dramatically evolved in good ways. I think that a lot of the roots are still there, but very different on those later albums. Jordan's First Choice really kind of showcasing the skills that everyone has in these in the band. Another one that we are familiar with, those anarcho punks are mysterious. We're presidents, we're all congressmen, we're all cops in waiting. We are the workers of the world, talking about ideological division a little bit inside various music scenes, probably the punk scene. It's very like us versus them thinking. And like reality is messy and things aren't always as what they seem to be, which is like a very reoccurring theme in Against Me records as a whole. Your acoustic version of it, a little more reflective. This one sounds has a little bit of like sarcasm to it. Um, this doesn't have like that screamy vocals that we have heard from Laura across this album. This is more kind of more singy, more conversational based kind of tones. It doesn't have that gravel. It doesn't have like that just shredding of the vocals. So a little different for sure. And I think it kind of really has the skeleton of the acoustic version in it, but obviously in a full band. So it's the drums push a little bit harder than the earlier version. The distortion changes kind of like the tone of how you take the song. But this is a good one. This is a really good rendition of it. They didn't stray too far away from the original, which I think is impactful as well. I like switching it up, but groovy bass line for sure. Next one, we have your title track, which we were also familiar with, Reinventing Axl Rose, which is it starts with guitar, drum, and bass, but it's got like this like kind of walking bass line that's like pretty groovy. Do 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 do, and it's just or I'm thinking of Walking in Solanas, but it's still got the bass line of Reinventing Axl Rose is still it's still like groovy, and it's still fun, and it's just kind of talking about, I think, the punk scene probably at the time from when they were at. We want a band that plays loud and hard every night, doesn't care how many people counted at the door. It's we're here to have a good time. We're here to play music. We're here to like be here in community. And I think it was kind of poking fun a little bit at Axl Rose to a degree, which is pretty funny. Uh it's kind of like mocking him in a way. I think Axl Rose takes themselves way too seriously. Um and we'll talk about what the alleged Axl Rose response to this, but it's just such a fun song. Um just give me a scene where the music is free and the beer is not the life of the party. You're here for the music. Sure, you're having a good time, but um, we're just here. We're singing songs, we're dancing, we're having a good time, which that's kind of what I get out of this. And I agree. Play the songs and have fun and be together. You don't have to take it too seriously, but you can take it seriously, but not to the point where it's like you think you're a crazy god and you're the greatest rock and roller who has ever existed. Then it moves into definitely one of my favorites against me out songs of all time, and definitely a fan favorite, Baby, I'm an Anarchist. And it's kind of talking about it has this little like the guitar, you're like plucking a little bit, strumming one little chord, and then it comes in full band with these gang vocals. And again, you have that different different vibe. I don't know that it's really melodic, but you have Laura Jane Grace's lower voice and you have a higher pitched singer. This song was actually written for a different band. It wasn't written for Against Me, but Laura Jane Grace was one of the writers, along with Cassidy Wrist and Ron Ogman. So they wrote the song, but it only saw the light of day with this. And then Cassidy came in, so that's who it is. Cassidy came in and did the backing vocals for this recording. So allegedly showed up a little drunk too, which is okay. I think that's what you need in a song called Baby, I'm an Anarchist. But you have those two consistent voices throughout the entire song. And definitely one of their most famous songs, confronting liberals who want to take charge or make change without any risk or confrontation, which I think is interesting in 2026 when you think about it. You have a lot of those people. You have a lot of those people that want change, that maybe their heart is in the right place and they want to see the world evolve in a positive way, but they necessarily aren't ready to push it to the bounds that maybe it needs to go to. And it's like that separation a little bit. Through the best of times, through the worst of time, through Nixon and through Bush. It's just, dude, it's so good. Talks about reform versus revolution, comfort versus sacrifice to make these changes, to address these problems head on, symbolism versus action. It's thought provoking, and the guitar strumming, it's simple but it's aggressive. The gang vocals really blend well together on this. It's kind of got this like, you could like dance to this song and like a smooth kind of swaying vibe. It's slowed down, but it's so impactful. You got great drums again, and this kind of communal sing along. Baby, I'm an Anarchist. You're a spineless liberal. We marched together for the 8-hour day and held hands in the streets of Seattle. But when it came time to throw bricks through that Starbucks window, you left me all alone. And they just, the vocals, they just hit, you left me all alone. And then it lightens up with the all alone, the repetition of it with one person singing it and the higher pitched. And it's just going through these kind of points in history where, hey, we had to do something drastic to get our point across. We had to do something drastic so people would listen to us. You can't just vote and expect change to happen. You have to be the voice. You are the voice. You have to get community with you. Voting isn't it. Sure, it's a part of the process, but there's other things you can do. You can try to be the force that stops somebody from doing something horrible or being a pile of crap, you know? And I think that's really what this kind of the hypocrisies that are just there in so many political ideologies and what people are saying 24 years later, it's still there. That's for sure. Going back to another song that we are familiar with, if you are familiar with the acoustic stuff, Walking Is So Honest. Again, another grooving bass riff. It just like, dude, it's so freaking good. Dear Mother, this is just survival. Talking about, I think it's kind of like talks about the balance that Laura Jane Grace had when, she's playing these shows, but then also had a job. And kind of like it's like an emotional piece to the album and another fan favorite for sure. You're trying to survive independently. It touches on poverty, personal freedom, refusing to surrender. And the title, Walking, if you're walking, you're independent, you're by yourself, perhaps you're doing things your own way, and walking is still honest, maintaining that integrity that you have, that work ethic, or the just like the survival instincts that you had to keep on moving. It's a pretty tight song, and you get a little bit of the lighter tones in Laura's voice, but then you get the yelling, you get the screaming, and it's just like kind of like emotionally destroyed and empowered, and it just is so good. A song about burnout, trying to survive without losing who you are, without forgetting your roots, but advancing as a person. Something we can all relate to, and it's just woo-wee. It is beautiful. I like both versions of that one. I like the I like the acoustic version because it's kind of just stripped down everything, but the full band version I think gives it a little more oomph. It's really good. It's solid. And then the album ends with 8 full hours of sleep, the slowest song, the quietest song, and the singing on it. There's no screaming on it. It's just like desperation in the voice. It's dreamlike pacing a little bit. It has minimal drumming, soft vocals showing vulnerability. When you sleep, no one is homeless. When you sleep, you can't feel the hunger. And, that reflects in a lot of people too, myself included. Sometimes when things aren't going the way you want it to, when stuff has hit the fan, sleeping, you forget about it all. You're not stressing when you're sleeping. You're snoozing. You're in dreamland. You're unconscious in a way. You're not thinking about the cruelties that are happening in the world. You're not looking at homelessness. You're not looking at the abuse, the war, the violence, the struggle. And it's kind of crazy. It's a reflective song. And it's just such a crazy way to end this album, full of chaotic energy, just screaming and dancing and just sweating the whole time. So this, all right, we did this. We have expelled our energy and it's time to go to sleep for a full 8 hours. Gosh darn it. I wish I could get that every once in a while. It's crazy, man. No one is lonely in a dream, without classes, without nations. When you sleep, it's dude, it's powerful. Almost like ending the album with a little bit of hope. We've talked about all the struggles in life, We've talked about all the different ideologies and how different ways, like how maybe we'll never escape. But there might be a little bit of hope at the end, which is just a perfect, awesome way to end the album. The album artwork is a lot of fun. It is against me is in red. You have a black and white drawing of Axl Rose, some stars on there, and it's obviously definitely mocking the idea of this rock star mythology, and it's pretty awesome. Allegedly, Axl Rose got pretty upset about this album title. He bought the album, he smashed it, and then he made voodoo dolls of the band members. Now, there isn't like a lot of evidence that this really happened, but it's pretty funny. Which I I want to believe it, and I think I do believe it because Axl Rose is such a pretentious douche, and I personally cannot stand him. I used to listen to Appetite for Destruction. Slash is a great guitar player. Duff McKagan was a good at what he's doing and all that, but I just can't stand Guns N' Roses. If I never have to hear that stupid Patient song ever again in my life, God, that would be great. November Rain, I don't give a shit. I think, Chinese Democracy, all the hype that came up with that pile of trash, it just shows that, dude, we do need to reinvent Axl Rose. He probably does some good things for people. And I'm just, I'm not well versed in it, but we need to invent that. We don't need these big arena shows all the time. Like we need the circles that we once had, and we need to bring those back a little bit, like they had in 2002. But Voodoo Dolls kind of fits that unpredictability that he had during his little Chinese Democracy era. What happened after Reinventing Axl Rose was an array of music, a ton of studio albums being released, a lot of change in the band. Of course, Laura Jane Grace coming out as transgender, releasing some really impactful and important music after that. But Against Me to this day, and they've really changed, like, have advanced in their sound a little bit. Their next one was As the Eternal Cowboy, which had more like singing. It kept the rawness of it, but it was like kind of like expanded in the songwriting. Searching for a Former Clarity, that's probably like one of my favorite Against Me albums too. It's just so lyrically and musically amazing, and it has that raw energy to it as well. New Wave, an album that they got a lot of crap for, they got a lot of gruff for because they signed to a major label, but still has a little bit of, like, more hooks, more cleaner production, mainstream exposure, but still some really impactful songs. White People for Peace, such a good song and a meaningful song. I love New Wave quite a bit. I even love White Crosses, their other mainstream record that they had out there. It's good, and it kind of gets a little more. Laura Jane Grace sings a little bit more in those albums, but still brings out that iconic yell and that iconic voice. Transgender Dysphoria Blues, one of the most honest records that you'll ever get from a band ever. Truly, so good. Their last album was Shape Shift with Me, released in 2016, which is a total bummer, dude. Almost 10 years. I had heard that in like an interview, Against Me try to get back together, create some new songs, and it just didn't work out. I think there's some personality clashes between Laura and Andrew, especially. Andrew left the band for a little bit. They replaced him with Inge, I think his name was. He was the bass player for Refused. And then Andrew eventually came back. They've had a couple of different drummers. They had George from Hot Water Music for a little bit. They had Jay. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head right now. Jay Navarro? No, that's Dave Navarro. Jay Weinberg, who was in Slipknot and all those other bands. He left. And then Adam Willard has been kind of at the helm. I don't know if they'll ever get back together and do another show. I hope they do. I've been fortunate enough to see Against Me a handful of times. I've seen Laura Jane Grace play with the Devouring Mothers, which was a lot of fun. I've seen Laura Jane Grace do an acoustic show as well. So I've gotten plenty of exposure. Laura Jane Grace has released a ton of music under various different band names and solo records that are all worth listening to. And it's just it's crazy. Laura Jane Grace has released a book, really quite the artist. And it all started with Reinventing Axl Rose. I mean, I shouldn't say it all started, but a big part of it was Reinventing Axl Rose, an amazing album that you should absolutely listen to over and over again. The perfect punk debut. It's unfinished, like unpolished, emotional, and just raw. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. You're listening to P is for Punk. Follow me on all the Instagram stuff. You can follow me at P is for Punk. linktr.ee/P is for Punk is the link tree to get all the details on where you can find me and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're going to keep rolling. I know I missed a week. Life be busy sometimes, but we're back at it. Hopefully lining up some more interviews soon and talking more rock and roll, baby. Love you all. Take care.